Good evening. Welcome to the June 10th, 2019 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. Our first agenda item is public input. If there's anyone who wishes to talk to us about something that we're not going to be talking about otherwise on the agenda, this is your chance. Anybody? No. All right, on to public input. On to action items. A&R Plan 2019-1, 139 and 141 Main Street.
So, we have and let me just bring up GIS first just to go to existing, where did I put GIS? There we go. So this is the existing configuration of the property that is at 169. And what is happening is that they are carving off a portion in the rear, and then that will be merged with the property at 141. So here, and let me just sketch it out a little bit. So this portion right here, which also comes to the street, that's going to be then merged with this property to create a larger property at 141. The remaining lot, when you look at the requirement, whoops, how about if I go to it with the finger? Come on. Now it's just playing with me.
Isn't technology wonderful?
Yes. Okay. So looking at the requirements for the neighborhood business, you have lot area of 20,000 square feet, lot frontage of 100 feet, front yard setback of 40 feet, and sides of 15. So one of the questions that Bob had texted or emailed me over the weekend was, in this, the existing structure at 139 Main Street does not comply with dimensional standards. This house was pre-existing non-conforming prior to our zoning change in '86, where this became neighborhood business. Building inspector and the zoning bylaw basically identify that when you have pre-existing non-conforming use, here we have the lot that does comply. It's not increasing any degree of non-conformance. We're not increasing a setback or decreasing a setback further than what it is. So it becomes a compliant lot. And I'm of the opinion that it's then entitled to endorsement. But then also we have to just sort of remember under A&Rs, endorsement of an A&R does not constitute conformance with the zoning bylaw. So as sort of like a backup and just the next A&R plan that we have, I'll make sure on the agenda we give a little bit more time when we have new members coming in to sort of give an overview. A&R stands for approval not required. What that means is that under subdivision control law, when you create property, a subdivision is more than just division of land. It's division of land and laying out of infrastructure. Approval not required means that you already have existing infrastructure and roadway that is accessible, i.e. Main Street. Clearly, even though there are potholes and people may complain about the roadway, it still is accessible. It is drivable, and you are able to access through the frontage of the land. That's actually the standard that the board has to endorse an A&R. This could have 20 different zoning violations on it. It still is entitled to our endorsement. Where it becomes a little confusing and where boards sometimes withhold endorsement is when it becomes questionable whether or not that really is a town road. So there are many instances where you may have a right-of-way, but the pavement ends, say, 100 feet prior, and they say, well, we're still using this as frontage. That may raise a question whether or not it really is a street and it's accessible. And that's sometimes associated with instances where the board may say, no, this is really a subdivision because you're creating the infrastructure. Main Street, of course, we don't have to worry about that. This, even if it did create a zoning violation, say the side property line was 13 feet away from the side, that just means there would be an enforcement action through the building department, and very often you may see accessory structures or even primary structures slated that they'd be demolished because maybe that's the plan that they have. Here, that is not the case. They plan on having a compliant lot, meets the area, meets the frontage more importantly, because that's what we're looking at. And because it doesn't increase the degree of nonconformance of the structure, realistically, they're going to be fine from a zoning standpoint.
Okay. Any questions, comments? You get to do this.
So, the need was to combine these two plats. Would we know, or can we ask as to why do they want to combine these two plats? Is there a business plan?
Doesn't matter. They want to make this as small as they can and put as much of the land with this one as they can. So they're putting this and this into combining it with this and trimming this down to a compliant, smaller. It's still compliant though.
Still
Or
compliant.
we're gonna decide it is in a minute.
Okay.
So sometimes what we end up doing is, for example, when you look at the existing property, this is 141, this is auto repair garage. The tree line is fairly established here. Let's say they wanted to take down some trees and they want to expand their facility. That may be something that comes back to the planning board for special permit because that type of use within this district would be allowed by special permit. Sometimes it may require going from the zoning board of appeals. And while we may, sometimes the property owners or the applicants will say, here's our intentions. It basically just gives us an idea as far as what that future could be. But that's where with A&Rs it comes back to, does it have frontage? Is it a publicly maintained way? And is it accessible? And that ends up being our standard for review.
So, any other questions?
Some motion would be in order at this point, and hence I will make said motion, that move that the board find that approval is not required for this and authorize the planner to sign on behalf of the board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So voted. All right.
You want these back?
Yes, please.
Yeah, they need, did you get one? Okay, yeah. This is what we were just looking at, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. They use them,
So what happens is, and this is for anyone, no one is here. If they were here, I would tell them that I'd be signing the Mylar tomorrow, and then these get distributed to town departments so that they know the action that we took.
okay. Next item, request for determination of minor modification number 2 of special permit, 1997-8, wireless communication facility at 20 Indian Path.
Good evening. Jeff Barbadora from Crown Castle. So this is AT&T at 20 Indian Path, and they have existing antennas on the tower. They are replacing 3 antennas. They're adding 3 new antennas. And if you look at, if you have it in front of you, sheet C4, you can see the plan view
Come on.
of the existing antennas on the left and then on the right where they're adding. So they're going from 9 antennas to 12. And then if you want to go back to C3, it just shows the elevation of the tower where they're showing a face of the tower at the top, and the antennas are similar, very similar to the existing of AT&T's. So it's all they're doing. They're replacing 3 and adding 3.
just saw something about an application that's coming into us very soon, and I think it's about this tower.
For property adjacent to this property.
Right, but they were talking, in the limited material I've seen, it was that they were going to abandon, I think maybe take down this tower.
Within the narrative, that is what is described, yes.
Yeah, and including AT&T. So I'm a little bit,
If, I don't know anything about it, but
Okay.
if that's the case, they still move forward with their changes because a lot of these take, you know, a year or more, you know. By
okay.
the time they get the approvals and rebuild it,
Yeah.
and they need to move their technology forward.
yeah, it looks like they're only moving one property over.
Yeah, you know what, I'll,
Yeah, well, it's okay.
yeah,
I didn't even, I just came across the fact that that was coming in. It's sort of new.
yeah, yeah,
It's within the last 7 days.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. It's a lot to know about wireless towers, and Joe's going to tell us a little bit.
Okay, so as was stated, this is an existing tower. The board originally approved things back in around 2000. There's been a couple modifications as additional carriers have come online. And then also for this specific carrier, this is the second modification where previously they had swapped out existing panels that were part of the original submission. So with the change from 3G to 4G and now to 5G, gonna assume,
Exactly, yeah.
they end up coming in front of the board for a determination of minor modification that the original special permit that then laid out the tower as well as the compound and the physical site, that it's largely unchanging and that we're just looking at basically an equipment change out. Sometimes, you know, there'll be additional cabinets that are added. Here, basically the modifications end up being to wiring as well as the antennas and some of the fiber that then connects it, but they're using existing shelters. So on the ground, there's no changes to the existing compound. At least there's nothing that's indicated on the plan.
There's
So
nothing on the ground, this is just antenna work.
So, basically, what happens with the planning board with these types of requests is a request for determination whether or not this falls within the original auspices of the special permit. As a minor modification comes in, and the board considers whether it is or not. If there was additional things that, like they were increasing the height or expanding the compound or changing the facility in a significant way, the board within scope that then is also defined by various federal laws regarding regarding wireless communication facilities, which then we're going to learn a little bit more about that in a couple of weeks when we get our wireless consultant in for that one that Bob was talking about. We'll learn more when we have full contingent as far as like how the board reviews wireless facilities when it's starting from scratch. Here, because we're dealing with an existing facility, swapping out antennas and then adding 3, the question ends up being, as far as from the board, whether or not this fits within the original decision as a minor modification.
Yeah, I think part of this minor modification thing is that, I don't know, a few years ago, 3 years ago, the FCC came out with new rules that said as long as they're not doing more than, 10 feet something, whatever,
Yep.
then basically we couldn't.
Switch.
It's a by right.
We
They call it a by right in the mandate.
yeah, by right mandate. Before that, even the minor changes had a public hearing and
Right,
all of
exactly.
that. Is there anyone who wants to talk about this? I didn't think so. anybody up here have any questions about what's proposed or what?
I had one question. So, Joe.
Oh, yeah.
On page 4, was it 3 being replaced by 3 or?
Three being replaced by 3 and then adding 3 new ones. So they're going from 9 antennas to 12 antennas.
Okay. The other page, Joe.
The-
The page 4.
All of those are on the same,
Let me just.
They're on the same level. It's a 90-foot level.
yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So that's where you can see with the existing on the left, the proposed on the right, you have a new one in this general vicinity that my mouse is. You have one on sort of the upper right side where my mouse is, and then one on the lower right. They actually have mounting points, these little circles, where those sort of get mounted to.
But I think all of the changes probably fall within the by right.
Correct. Yeah.
Any further consideration?
Move that the board find that this is a minor modification and issue the required documentation so stating.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Thank you very much.
Hearing none. All in favor?
Let's vote.
Aye.
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 So voted.
So then what I end up doing is preparing a letter codifying the board's vote that goes to the building department as well as the town clerk, so that they know that we've reviewed it, and you can just proceed with filing a building permit application.
You decide what to do with it.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure thing.
It's interesting to read through it all and sort of begin to get a little perspective on it, though. We're gonna get a lot more perspective when the full tower comes through.
Yeah.
That will be a slightly lengthier process than what we've just done.
For certain values, it's slightly. It happens, I've done every cell tower. I helped write the bylaw for it, so back in the dark ages. Anyway, the bill's been taken care of?
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking maybe we ought to get the general business things done
Yep.
before we dive into discussion. Because we have 11 minutes.
Do you want to take care of the 2 sets of minutes that are there?
Sure. We've done minutes.
So April 8th would be the first ones up.
Any corrections, comments?
Move that the board approve the minutes of April 8th, 2019 as drafted with any corrections to be noted during discussion of the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I couldn't see anything to pick at.
Too bad. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted.
I don't vote on this, right?
That's right.
You probably,
Because I was.
Technically could,
yeah.
Oh.
you know,
because it's basically approving it to form.
Yeah.
But you also can just abstain because we have 3 members to vote to approve.
It's,
I said I was not there in the meeting. So.
Right.
it's common for people to do that, although I've forgotten what Megan used to call it, but ministerial duties.
It is. It is an administrative duty, so it's sort of a function like signing bills. It's sort of like, well, I'm not going to sign this because I didn't participate in that subdivision. I mean,
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I have heard different people express different opinions. Some people prefer not to participate in a vote on minutes where they were not present for that meeting. Other people, there's no legal requirement that you abstain if you weren't present. Some people even go so far as to refuse to second a motion to approve minutes if they weren't present at the meeting. No requirement for
Yeah.
withholding
I don't
a
think
second
that's, putting it on the floor is, got nothing to do with whether you were there or not.
That's right. That's my answer every time someone claims that they can't second a motion on minutes because they weren't there.
He's
That's
the
come across
assistant
more than
town
once.
meeting moderator too, by the way, just in his spare time. Okay, we voted, right?
On April 8th,
On that,
yes.
on the 6th, on the 8th.
Now we have the next
Now
one.
we have the 22nd. And once again, I will offer a motion to approve the minutes of April 22nd, 2019 as drafted with any corrections that might be noted during discussion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion.
I couldn't find anything to pick at with these either.
And you gotta have more mistakes here, so we have some.
I know.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted.
I can
is-
then give staff report and
okay,
then
go for it.
just want to at least tomorrow night should be formal announcement. We did conclude the interview process for the conservation agent / planner position, and very pleased to have Leah Cameron, who's currently the conservation administrative assistant, be elevated into that position. She, prior to joining Grafton, had actually been a conservation agent for Mendon on a part-time basis, and that's where her schooling is and all that with natural resources and political science. So glad that we can elevate her into that position. She brings a lot of knowledge in a lot of the applications that we're dealing with, a lot of the issues, because of how closely she did work with Maria Mast in supporting Maria in the conservation agent position. So now it starts sort of a secondary process of hiring for the admin in that position. We'll be starting that process. Number of things that are sort of in the fire right now. Working with CMRPC to try to complete the open space plan. Gave a number of members some homeworks to do a survey of conservation lands. So I'll have to just sort of see how everyone's doing on their homework. Especially with the nice weather we had this weekend.
I've done part of my homework.
Good.
Quite finished yet.
Other things is that I'll be coordinating grant. I'm trying to remember because it was 3 weeks ago, whether or not I mentioned it. Town meeting had approved funding through CPC for a historic preservation grant. I'll be doing the admin work on that. What that project is going to do is going to revisit the historic inventory in Grafton, try to update things. Some documentation maybe is missing or it wasn't done on some structures, so it's going to bring everything up to date. As I was reminded by Mass Historic, it had been about 35 years since the last inventory had been done. Also working with the with various departments on drainage issues on Adams Road. I'm coordinating sort of like a drainage issue with Gristmill Village. What's going on is that with grading that had been going on, and also late in the season, this was back in the fall, hydro seeding that didn't take, dealt with some runoff. It was pooling on someone's property, and then with the wet winter we had, it actually went on to an adjacent property owner. So I've been working with Graves Engineering, the developers, engineers, as well as DPW and the property owners to resolve a solution for that. We have a concept all mapped out. Now the property owner just wants assurances as far as certain things, which really is a property owner and developer agreement, because they want riverbank stone rather than gravel or mulch. So there's just some fine tunings that we need to do, but we'll be resolving that. I'm working with Jean Poteet, sort of furthering some of the work with the Transit Village. JLL, their real estate broker, has sort of encouraged them to look at maybe broadening some of the uses that may be permitted immediately on Route 30, sort of like that portion of Discovery Drive that would be fairly close to Westboro Road. And we're just sort of going over concepts, what that could be. Our intent is to maybe come for the first July meeting with the whole board and just sort of talk about maybe allowing some additional uses beyond what is specifically supposed to be associated with the veterinary school or pharmaceutical company, and maybe broadening that to allow for some sort of limited retail. The idea was that JL felt that there may be a market for veterinary-like services that aren't necessarily directly supporting Tufts, but maybe could be associated with it. So want to have that discussion with the board. I am finalizing the closing documents with DCAM. We're currently engaged in doing the title research and signing off, making sure that there is clear title to state land. And while you think that that may be simple, sometimes that is very difficult, especially because you're going back to 1890s when the land was first purchased by the state for the
Maybe taken by the
hospital.
state.
Yeah, exactly. So working on that, and then also starting to work with, or continuing to do work with Dominic Afonso. He has the portion that immediately is against Route 30. We have the subdivision behind Village Ed Institute, and this is the commercial area. I've been working with the Board of Selectmen's offices, or Select Board's office, rather, DPW and them, in order to finalize agreements to allow for the sewer to be extended from Dana Trucking up to their property so that we can continue with MassWorks. And of course, I am doing admin work for the MassWorks for getting our first payment before the end of the fiscal year, which would be June 30th. So things are pretty busy in the office as far as existing projects and things that are really looking forward. I think we mentioned at the last meeting, any board members or anyone that is watching, we put out a press release, and yes, we've had the survey for the MBTA up on the town's website, but we wanted to try to get broader exposure and some exposure with the press as far as the Grafton MBTA commuter survey. There's a QR code on, we have these nice boards that are up at the station. Users of the commuter rail can actually, with a QR code, access the survey, fill it out. We've gotten over 220 responses so far. Number one comment so far is more parking.
Surprise, surprise.
Exactly.
What are they gonna do? Put in a second, a deck? There isn't any room.
There's always room if you think creatively.
Well,
Bus people in from another lot or
So-
have a
well,
shuttle.
no, the geography there is
I
tough.
know.
Yeah.
There's a hillside they're pretty well dug into.
Yeah. So, and there's many other questions as far as like services and amenities that people may value in the immediate area. So our hope is that, and that goes through June 30th. Our hope is that over the summer, we might be able to data crunch some of that, tie that together with some of the Tufts work. We might be able to then identify some of the uses that people may view as beneficial in that corridor. And that's taking us to 7:29.
I think it's 7:30. No.
Just wait a few seconds.
Was there any correspondence that anybody
Yeah.
wanted to?
There's a house on Fay Mountain that's coming out of 61B.
No. Yeah, 61, what?
Say whatever it is.
61
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, the recreational land. That's a house that backs up to the town-owned land.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That'll be coming around to us for,
Well, they haven't even put it into, this is a letter from the assessor saying, we see you've listed it, you have to go talk to us.
okay, they
Reminding them that they're obligated to
Yeah.
file that said notice.
jumped that hurdle.
Yeah,
Of course, they're required to do that at the time they have a signed purchase and sale agreement.
Right.
So
Yeah,
the fact that
yeah,
they're offering it for sale.
they can't do it until they have a PNS.
Because the PNS sets the price for
price,
the town.
yes.
Yeah, and we'll have to do some research and staff on staff level first, just identify because some of those lots were part of the original like Misco Preserve. Some of those frontage lots. I don't know if this is one of them. It may not be, but we'll take a look and sort of we'll have to put this on an agenda item once we get actual information and proper notice, so we can have a discussion and we can't afford every single parcel
No,
that comes out, but
No.
there's always an opportunity to sort of identify portions, maybe identify what is an important area, and then work with land trust or property owners in order to identify, because also it's fairly wet back there. So some of it is naturally sort of restricted from being developed.
How many
just a
acres?
bit wet.
How big a parcel was it? I didn't catch. Well, never mind.
It's okay. Yeah,
We'll find out.
I have to look under correspondence.
We'll find out more.
Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
find out.
that's-
Guarantee that.
Okay,
We've succeeded in running the clock past 7:30.
yes. We're good at that. Any other correspondence? issues?
20 acres. 20 acres.
20, okay. Then it's something to talk about. Any other correspondence?
Nothing that I saw of note.
If not, we'll reopen the hearing on Meadowbrook Manor.
Before we do, and I'm just looking in the audience, just to see if we have anyone that is here for either the Ridings or Brigati Village. Okay, so now may be an opportunity before we get into this to sort of describe what's going on. So were you here at the last hearing we had with them?
I think I was at the first one, not the second.
Okay.
one.
So this would have been the third. So that project is a special permit that requires 5 members or 4 members to vote to approve a project. As you can see, we only have 4 members here, and probably on the stage right, stage left. I'm not
Stage right.
Okay.
Audience left.
He's new to the board, so he hadn't even participated with any of those. Therefore, for tonight, what we had done was re-advertised Brigati Village. However, because of the lead time we need to re-advertise, originally we were hoping by now to have filled the other 2 vacant planning board spots. So ordinarily we'd have 6 people up here. That is scheduled for tomorrow night. So because we only have 4 that could proceed, the applicant requested continuance so he can have a full panel to follow through the hearing. So later on, once we get past this, the board is going to move to continue the public hearing that was re-advertised for this as well as the ridings to next meeting on June 24th without taking any testimony so that we can ensure that all members, once we have 2 more appointed, are able to participate.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you for that personal explanation. I appreciate it very much. And I'll stay for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I find
The
this fascinating.
ticket prices are right, you know.
It's nice and cool. It's getting
Yeah,
more humid outside.
yeah.
So,
Okay. Now, Meadowbrook Manor.
Ready? Okay. Again, my name is Andy Baum from Summit Engineering, here on behalf of Bob and Madeline Flynn, the project proponents for Meadowbrook Manor. When we last discussed the other remaining items that we had outstanding with that project had to do with the access of fire apparatus to the driveway. And based on an actual field test that was performed, I think 2 or 3 days prior to our hearing, we ended up reconfiguring the grading of the driveway entrance. So Joe, if you go to the next sheet.
The next one.
Yeah, it kind of shows.
Is that the profile?
The profile page,
Okay.
please, yeah.
Which one do you want?
Yeah, right, nope. right
You
where
want
were.
the profile? Okay.
Right there. So, what we did in the revised set of plans you folks have in front of you is, recut the profile and the first approximate 80 feet of the driveway. So the original intent was to preserve or maintain the existing paving. But, given the results of that test and the geometry of the extended rear end of that ladder truck, which is our most restrictive apparatus, the first 80 feet would have to be removed and then reconfigured as shown on that sheet, and then replaced with the respective pavement. And Joe, if you pan to the left on that sheet, I also provided, nope, down, there you go.
Let me just zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, right
Yeah,
here. Okay.
there's a detail where we took the scale information from the truck and provided a 1-to-1 scale, and you can show the restrictions of the fire truck. So before, I was able to prove, based on that geometry, why he was hitting, just barely. And then I was able to provide some clearance off the rear end of the truck axle, and then provide the curving of the, excuse me, return to existing grade at that intersection. The most restrictive turn maneuver is going to be coming from Route 140, coming up the other way. I don't have the problem of going from a downhill curve to an uphill curve. I've actually got uphill to uphill. So the most restrictive movement is what's shown right there. And then the second item that Graves had pointed out had to do with the cross slope at the T turnaround. And we added some spot grades and adjusted some grading at the T turnaround to have a less than 4% cross slope for the maneuvering of the fire truck. And just as a side note, based on some of that cutting, Joe, if you go to just zoom in and around the drainage basin, there's been some reconfiguration of the grading and the cross culvert to make sure we had adequate cover and the grading tied together appropriately. So that's the extent of the plan revisions from the last time we spoke. So again, if you had any questions, we received a letter from Graves today. I don't think they had no further issues with the submitted plans. So again, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, but I think we've addressed everything to date.
Could we go back to when you're all set?
Yeah.
Could we go back to the fire truck?
Sure.
And just the little drawing over here. Now, what am I looking? I've got 2 or 3 different lines, and I'm not quite sure whether the labeling tells me what I want.
Sure. So you've got obviously the fire truck, and you can see that's dimensioned off of the assistant chief's dimensions for the approach. I calculated the approach angle. He's got 2 foot clear from the rear axle to the bottom of the truck. So I calculated a 7-degree overhang angle or approach angle out the rear, and then I also calculated what the maximum interior angle can be to provide for the truck. Okay, the upper lighter line. Okay, you'll see a leader or an arrow pointing to it says existing grade.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we see today. So you can see that the
Okay.
road is higher, and it's a little. Keep in mind that you don't get the vertical exaggeration that you see on the profile sheet, but you can see that the existing paving is higher than the proposed paving. Okay, and then the darker line with the second leader is a proposed grade. So we actually lowered the grade so that when the worst condition, which is where the truck rear wheel is in the gutter, okay, what would be the gutter line of the road, and then going uphill, it's like a seesaw. So if I were to cut and put that front wheel on the existing grade line, you can see where the rear end of the truck would actually hit the center line or very close to the center line of the roadway. But because we lowered the grade and it hinged down around the rear axle, I provided almost a 4/10 clearance off the rear of the truck.
Now where the truck's hitting, is that still on the private property, or is that part of the road?
It's part of the road.
Okay. I'm looking at the dark line that's down below.
Behind the truck?
You have a dark line that's just barely clearing the truck, more or less. And then you have another dark line that's following the line down.
Yeah, that's just meant to show the angle geometry of the truck itself, the projection.
Yeah.
So if you were to set that truck on a level, that dark line that cuts through, I know what you're talking about.
You're gonna end up with 0.37
Yes.
feet.
Yep.
About 5 inches, something like that.
Yep. Yep.
And now, And the fire department is okay with this?
I've provided all this information to the fire department, but I have not received any comments back from the fire department. Unless they've did something separately.
No, I've not heard from the fire department on it. What about in the reverse? Coming down, leaving the site. Does that create any issues? I'm just trying to sort of think about having it come down and then kicking up. And does the back end come down on
Come back down. So what will likely happen is you've got a radius curve. The front of the truck will actually be over the center line of the road, coming back down before the rear catches up. I mean, I could provide a detail coming out the other way, but you got to keep in mind the truck is wider than the paving.
Yeah, I understand. I'm worried about this coming into sort of the gutter and then the crown of the road as you're coming.
You're exiting the property.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's the hard part. And I know as far as like when they did the work, how it got accentuated more than what was the existing condition, i.e. using your RV as far as what you found.
Well, they built the road wrong. The road engineer told me that they would have to go back 600 feet to get that crown out of the road. And then they fixed my driveway so that my RV could go in and out. But he said they would have to start at my driveway and go back 600 feet towards 140 to get that crown out of the road. You're disputing that, but
No, I
have
just,
you been on that road?
what, Meadowbrook?
Yes.
All three of us drive it all the time.
You don't use Stowe Road to go to your house.
Oh, no, we do that too. We
Okay.
use all the roads.
Well, the road is very crowned, and what they did was they didn't tear up any of the roadway. They paved over. And they did it in two sections where they didn't get it right on one side, and then they tried to get it right on the other side, and that's what made a crown in the middle. And I lived there for 30-some years. I never had any trouble taking an RV in and out until they did the road.
I was thinking, Joe, it's not just the up and over, but I want to be sure that the engine isn't going to get out on the road and then turn. The engine has got to turn,
When they did the test, the engine comes in from 140, because that's where the fire barn is.
Right.
right?
Okay, and he had no trouble making that turn, okay, because if you look at a long truck, when it leans to the left, it had no trouble going in. It's not gonna have any trouble going out, because it's gonna be leaning the opposite way. My motorhome does the same thing.
Plus, keep in mind, we did widen the approach from what it is today.
So, I'm a little concerned that we don't have a definite statement from the fire department.
Right. No, I mean that becomes problematic because if we say, condition everything that you need to get sign off, you could be basically constructing everything and then you have to go back and try to re-engineer if they say all of a sudden this doesn't work. And just receiving Jeff's this morning, he's saying that from an engineering and from geometry standpoint, it's okay, but having the person from the fire department that then took the truck and taking a look, that's really one of those pieces that.
I requested that, because we wanted
Yeah.
to see the amount of overhang that was there and what we would have to do to reconstruct the driveway.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where it looks to all of us like it probably will work. It would be helpful for us to have a written confirmation from fire.
Okay. The
That's
fire
I
truck
agree.
could also back out.
Yeah,
That's the other thing, if it chooses not to do the turnaround.
yeah. I think, generally speaking, in the past, when we've had questions about accessibility of the fire department and adequacy of the fire department, we've always wanted written confirmation from fire that yes, we agree this is acceptable to us.
The reason I'm concerned about that is that we had hoped to close the hearing tonight.
Well, can we close it with the report coming in, fire department making it Correct. If they don't respond, I mean, what can we do?
Technically, that is able to happen. The challenge ends up being if they say, no way can we support this. If we close the hearing, then we only have the option to re-advertise. So that ends up being the hard part outside of, the planning board on its own motion, because it's a safety issue, can reopen a subdivision hearing. In 19 years, I've only had that happen once, but it is within your jurisdiction to do that. But it also is one of those things that, as I indicated for the board, I had hoped to have a draft hearing decision tonight anyways, but due to other conflicts, I was not able to do that. Hence, that's why for tomorrow, added on to the agenda to have a draft decision considered. Quite honestly, it would probably be one of those things that would want to just keep the hearing open so that I can try to give Steve Shrest and the chief a call and find out, like, can you get us some form of indication whether or not this is acceptable? Receiving that, then we could actually proceed. But without having anything, I would then be having a condition in there that says something like, prior to endorsement, thou shalt receive sign off from fire department, and lack of sign off would then require coming back to the planning board to review engineering of this turn,
Okay,
which gets.
Go ahead.
Is it possible for us to not close the hearing, but at least to have you go ahead with drawing a draft decision,
That would be my recommendation, that
Yeah.
we could just handle it
so
tomorrow.
that we're not gonna tie them up any, yes,
But that's basically just to get
Hoping.
fire department saying, yes, we're okay.
right. And
If they say no, we're not, then
Well,
we
then we-
sort of have to go back to the drawing board.
We've been posted that anticipating that the need to act on this after tonight, after Joe can get the decision prepared. We've advertised earlier today to add this item to tomorrow night's meeting. We're meeting with the Board of Selectmen, I think Joe mentioned, to appoint two people, and then we were anticipating we'd then go over to the planning office and continue with this. If the hearing was closed, we'd just be taking a vote on it. I suppose that we continue, only we don't close the hearing, if need be, we close the hearing tomorrow night.
Right.
Right, so that would be, so since we're here, meeting on this tomorrow night anyway, if he can get a hold of the fire chief
Okay.
and get anything, at all, then we can move forward. And I would, we would like to get this off the plate too, so, and get you people settled. Okay?
The only quibble with keeping the hearing open is tomorrow night is advertised as a draft decision, not as a continuation of public.
When
hearing.
the lieutenant came out to do the fire test, it was just a couple inches, okay? His comment was if there was a fire burning on that street, they would take the fire truck in. It would be minimum damage to the back end, okay? It wouldn't do anything to the exhaust system, the suspension. It's just would be the trim of the back end of the fire truck would be the damage area.
I really
We're looking for the
would like to
easiest
see
way to
something better than that, though, because what happens the next time they pave the road? And
Well,
what did I just figure, say 5 inches,
5
4 inches?
Yeah.
Get
If you
bigger
repave
tires.
the road, you got the same problem all over again. The town's creating the problem, not me. Okay? They repave the road, they've just done the same thing all over again.
But,
We could revise the agenda for tomorrow night if
Yeah.
need be to
No, that's
describe
just what
it
we
as a
would do in the
continuation
morning.
of public hearing. And we're looking for the quickest way through this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the optimistic assumption that the fire will say this looks okay.
and I suspect they will.
Yeah.
And I think we should be optimistic that they will,
Yes.
and that we can close this.
Yes, let's,
And get your draft decision.
Well, they were willing to come out to do a test,
Yeah,
which, you know, I was grateful for.
okay.
Yes, from everything that's been said and described here, I'd be surprised if fire had a problem with this. But like we've said, we'd like to have it confirmed in writing just so that we're all on solid ground with this. And the quickest way forward, I think, it sounds like the quickest way forward will be for Joe to pester them tomorrow. And with any luck, we'll get something back from them, and tomorrow night we can wrap this up.
Okay?
Yep.
Do we need a
Send them
request to
to me.
continue the hearing?
Yeah.
Do we have to come back, would Summit Engineering need to come back tomorrow?
Right
Depends on
now,
what the fire
I'd sort of
department says.
basically just sort of say, let's play it by ear, because it all depends on the response. If they say
Okay.
yes, then we're basically closing and we're going forward. If they say no, then I'm giving you a call and trying to figure out, okay, what are we gonna do?
So,
Yeah, but he
Because-
won't, he's not going to have had it, depending on what comes out, he's probably not gonna be able to contribute a lot tomorrow night.
Correct.
We're gonna have to be at another, we're gonna have to work further.
Right.
so do I take it we have a unanimous vote of the 3 board members? Thank you.
We haven't taken any vote yet, but,
Yes.
Let's say it sounds probable.
yeah,
Sounds promising.
we need to dot the i's, though.
Yep.
The record should have
So
this
you're,
covered.
do we have to
so
do
that-
anything like?
Mr.
empower
Hassinger, do you think the fire truck could make it up your street?
George Hill Road?
George Hill Road?
Well, yeah,
It wouldn't make the turn. It wouldn't,
I-
it wouldn't make the turn off of Meadowbrook into George Hill, and it would not make the turn from Stowe Road into George Hill.
The Stowe Road's more open now, ever since they took out the island.
yeah, there's a big swing there.
But,
But if, I'm in the bus business, so the wheelbase of that truck, in order for a truck to make a real tight turn, the wheels have to be further back than the engine. On that truck, the engine's forward, so the wheels can only cut in so much.
They
A
did.
motorhome
make it-
can make the turn.
Yeah,
But
but they did
I-
make
I-
it onto George Hill Road because we had a barn fire on.
The
George
ladder
Hill
truck?
Road.
The ladder truck made it onto,
Actually, I don't know.
I don't think
that.
so.
No, it must have been the tanker.
right.
Yeah, I think that's what they'd use there anyway. There aren't very many tall buildings. So they'd use the tanker.
Yeah, yeah, there's probably not a whole lot of need, at least at our house.
There's a couple places where I wouldn't want to be driving a truck and not
Right.
needing a school bus. But other than that,
Although I think the fire truck's about as wide as the pavement, in parts of it.
And if we want to talk about George Hill Road, this is a bit off topic, but we've had some issues with tractor trailer rigs coming down Soap Hill
Yeah.
Road, trying to make their turn on George Hill Road, and
they can't do it.
they've gotten stuck.
Yeah, there are obstacles on the sides, like a stone wall, right?
But in any case, when we look at a new subdivision of any size, we're interested in ensuring adequate fire access. The existing roads in town, yeah, there are some issues, but that's,
Okay.
what we're trying to do is ensure that anything new that gets built is properly accessible to the fire department should the need arise. We all hope that the need will never arise.
Okay,
So
well,
Joe, do we need to do anything?
let's
We need-
move along.
They'll need to request a continuance to
So
tomorrow night.
a written request for continuation to tomorrow night would be in order.
30. I know, but 7:30, because then we can go later, and I'm sure we're gonna take more than half an hour to interview people. We mean,
You think
Why
so?
not?
You never know.
Joe, where's the meeting tomorrow night next
it's gonna
door?
be in the planning department office, or if I find space.
At 7:30,
Yes.
7:30.
okay,
Well,
thank you.
we'll be in here with the selectmen at their, we're the first thing on their agenda, I believe, but you never know with them. And when we get done, we'll
I understand.
be going over.
So I think it's the time for a motion. I'll move that the board grant the applicant's written request to continue this hearing to tomorrow night, June 11th, 2019 at 7:30 PM in the planning board office or another location to be announced later.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, so voted.
Thank you.
If all goes as expected, we'll have this wrapped up tomorrow.
All right, the ridings.
Yes.
We have
So
a,
it's a
we
it's a-
have a,
we have a request
have
for continuance
Necessary
and
request.
and also just I'm just opening it up. So whoops, what one did I pull up?
Good night.
Well, that's Brigade Village. So with the ridings, we did receive a request to continue, and also it was re-advertised for tonight. Sorry, well, this one we caught, and actually, we already have it advertised for June 24th. So we're basically all set on that. We're going to start the clock over and all that. We did, and let me just see in our notes. I'm just pulling up their last request for continuance. So that's what we did vote to continue it to tonight, and then we re-advertised, pushing it out to the 24th. One of the things, just to make sure that in case there's any sort of question, because the application was not withdrawn and that we re-advertised, we sort of have sort of like a two timeline thing. Where we did vote to continue to June 10th, which is tonight. We advertised for the 24th. So I'd recommend, so that we sort of keep a continuous timeline, recommend continuing the public hearing that was continued to June 10th to June 24th. And then at that, we can open it up and basically say, we've re-advertised, this is now starting the clock over, and all of that.
okay,
So,
Okay.
the ridings,
Yes.
move that the board grant the applicant's written request to continue the public hearing to Monday, June 24th, 2019 at 7:30 PM.
Second.
moved and seconded, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, so voted.
And on Brigade Village,
The Brigade Village.
move that the board grant the applicant's written request to continue the hearing to Monday, June 24th, 2019 at 7:30 PM.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. So
Before
voted.
you move to adjourn.
Oh, well, no, we got stuff.
What?
yet. Discussion items. We got reports from,
Oh, okay.
are there any discussion items we want to take up tonight? I didn't think so.
I
No,
think
no,
I
real-
do
seriously,
something I wanna
because-
pass on.
What?
I do have something I want to say to Joe.
Oh, okay, but, the discussions that we've been discussing having, are best, include everybody who's gonna be with us.
Yep.
Not dive into it. Yeah, 3 of us have been into it, now 4, it'll be 5 and 6.
You don't want to have a discussion about signs?
No.
I have a question. So how does this discussion items, is it a pre-planned word item or?
What we'll do is basically identify then under discussion items specific topics. So within agenda, we have to give public and anyone that is maybe following an issue an idea as far as what the board is intending to discuss. Very often, we'll just delete discussion items, so it doesn't even appear there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that-
for the, sorry,
That's a heading with no items under it, I guess, like
Yeah.
A and B,
okay.
tonight.
If it has to be an item, so I was going back to your point, Joe, about the parking situation out there at the Grafton MBTA station, right? So if we need to discuss that for the 24th, I get it, we cannot discuss it today. It's
Yep.
not yet posted for discussion. So do we table it now and you can include
Yeah,
it?
so one of the things is that we have this other item that's called any other items which may lawfully come before the board. So that would be something like, hey, this is something that came to my attention. I'd like to have a set aside time at a future meeting so that the board can say, okay, let's try to figure that out. Sometimes there's something that literally just happened half an hour before that the board needs to take action on. That's where that would fall under as well. But that any other items which may lawfully come before, that's also something to raise issues because it may not have been communicated to the chair that want to discuss something, and a good formal way to sort of bring issues to the board for broader discussion so that we can then designate time, because very often when we're getting to 7 and 8, or once we get to 7, it's usually because we're pushing number 8, which is vote to extend beyond 10 o'clock. So that's where sometimes some things warrant a little bit broader time on the agenda, and then able to set things up.
Be forewarned though on something, on things like that parking, we don't have any jurisdiction over it. That's, first of all, isn't that MBTA or whoever?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's not us.
MBTA.
And we have zero to say about it. So, just be aware that we have our limits, and that's one of them.
But there are things that, so for example, I'm representing Grafton on this commuter rail communities coalition, which then is raising all sorts of issues on commuter rail, whether it's timeliness, whether or not whether the Wi-Fi works, whether or not there's parking, whether or not there's any sort of issues like whether there's enough trains that are in service. So while we may not have jurisdiction as far as like we need to have more parking, as a planning board, we can sort of voice support to encourage, say, the Board of Selectmen or Central Mass Regional Planning to within their 2040 transportation plan, look at expanding opportunities or things like that. Or so we can cover things in a broader standpoint. We just have.
No, and I agree that it's something that the board can bring up too, but you're really
Yeah.
the one who's the point person, not just the whole board kind of doing that. And,
Planning.
yeah.
Part of planning, like if you're doing a master plan, you'd say we need more parking, maybe, and so that's, in the broader sense, the board is empowered to do studies and
Yes.
all that sort of thing. Not necessarily mandate that they go out and build a parking garage, but if they propose to make any changes out there, I seem to recall that we had to give us a permit, special permit. I think it's special permit, not site plan.
Yeah.
So it would
No,
come
I
back
mean
to
that's
us
a
if they
parking
wanted to-
facility. That's a parking facility that actually requires that's a special permit under the zoning bylaw. I mean, they could come in and say that they're exempt because they're a state entity and all that stuff. But
They could say that.
So we cannot build it, but we have avenues to influence some of those conversations. And the
Correct.
situation does get very acute after 8:30. If anyone drives into the MBTA station after 8:30, they will not find a parking spot. It's one of the smaller parking locations across this line, Worcester line. So that's a challenge there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that surface someplace recently. I don't know, maybe it was on social media, but I thought it might have been in print. But I suppose that's the good news, in that the commuter rail's being used more, which is a good thing.
yeah. And what's interesting is that as part of this survey, that once it closes, and John Allen, the economic development specialist, crunches the numbers. We'll share that, of course, with all the boards. But one of the things that we have asked, and a lot of people have filled it in, is just the zip code they're coming from. Mm-hmm. Vast majority are coming from Grafton. And like from the 3 zip codes. So add those all up, and it was like 52-53%. So majority are coming, and then a lot of it is. Then there's just a lot of other little slices to the pie. But hopefully we'll get more response and have a better idea as far as then who's using it as well, and that can also enter into, say, other efforts if we found that primarily there was a lot of people within Grafton, that might be an opportunity to expand the RTA or WRTA as far as providing service, because right now they just do a single up and down Worcester Street. So there's some things that we're able to then do.
Yeah, I wonder if more trains would require more parking spaces, or would it just be that people would be able to get on a train without as much of it?
I think at least, and one of the things we asked for is basically there's, if you take the survey, and it's hard because we identified like what time do you typically get there, and trying to identify like when things really fill up, and it's sort of like the 7:36 train or whatever is when almost like things
I
are
take the
full.
5:30 train.
Oh my God.
So the 6 and the 6:30 start getting filled up.
Yeah.
7:30 is absolutely packed. By the time you hit Westboro, people are standing right into Boston. But if you come after 8, 8:30, people don't come in unless they get dropped off because there is no spot available.
Yeah.
And that becomes a big challenge out there.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, now I just
Yeah.
to you, and this really isn't a major thing for the whole meeting. Bob and I are planning on not being available, so you're losing 2 members on November 25th meeting. That's the
Are
one
we?
before they-
Oh man, okay.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna say like the 2nd July meeting. I'm.
No. We're way ahead on. This is the only window that we can find where we can celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. And it's it. There isn't any other. It's our actual anniversary.
I think that
before
is
that.
the perfect opportunity for us to
just-
miss a meeting or
Yes.
something like
or
that.
shift it a week, or,
That's it. That's the only window.
yeah,
Remind me once we get to September.
yeah, because I wouldn't want to miss a meeting.
No,
I
we will
haven't
have
missed a
we
meeting.
we will have a quorum. We'll have 3. You
Wow.
can call in.
No, you can't.
No, well, I don't know what her plans are exactly.
I don't either. But it isn't going to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, now.
They put in remote
Move to
participation.
adjourn?
There was reports from
Oh,
planning board representatives,
Oh,
blah, blah,
sorry.
blah. There aren't any reports, are there? I didn't
No.
think so. Now,
Move to adjourn.
Well, by way of a report from the planning board,
Go.
from the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee, of which I am the board's representative to. The committee met last week and has pretty well developed a set of action items.
Okay.
And a substantial fraction of them involve this board. No surprise.
what are we gonna make happen? Okay, we'll find out, at another time.
Yes, it's still in draft form, and I don't think there's anything out there that would come as a particular surprise.
Now, there was a motion, I'm waiting for a second.
I'll second the motion.
No, it's not debatable. All in favor?
right.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed, so voted.